All right, we're going to stay on the topic of undergraduate students, and I'm happy to invite Bridget Trogden and Martyn Oliver.
We get both microphones.
I'm going to hold on to this. I just want to see one of the team.
We can.
Sure. Yeah, we can share. You want to go first? Introduce yourself?
No, you start.
Okay, all right. First off, I have to say, because he is too humble to say it, Jimmy Ellis is now Dr. Jimmy Ellis. Almost exactly a week ago, he defended his dissertation. So, yeah, so if you didn't know that, making doctors left and right. Oh, that's perfect, right there. Okay. I wander when I talk. So I've been sitting in the room all day because I'm also new faculty. So I'm Bridget Trogden, hired at AU as Dean of Undergraduate Education and Academic Student Services. But and also in a faculty role, I don't think it says it up there, but my faculty role is as professor in the School of Education. I know there's some School of Education people here. Yeah, right. But I do a lot. So my doctorate is actually in chemistry, and I've been a professor for 19 years straight through. This is now my third institution. But I do a lot of research more in the education area on STEM education. But my job here is 100% administrative. I will teach at some point, probably next year, because it is the greatest job in the world. And Martyn's going to talk a little bit about himself.
Hi, I'm Martyn Oliver. I'm really impressed that Bridget is so confident that she's going to find time to teach, because I know her job. And so I'm Martyn Oliver. I have a faculty appointment in the Department of Critical Race, Gender, and Culture Studies here at AU with a background in religious studies. That's where my training is. And I started a year ago as the faculty chair of the AU Core. Do we have slides? We move ahead. Yeah. Aha, there, that's us. We'll kick this off. So we've got a few parts here. We're going to give you sort of a broad overview of undergraduate education here at American University. We'll talk about our core curriculum, which is the general education program here at AU, and then kind of try to wrap it up with the various services that Bridget's office provides to all of our students. Yeah.
And we could have made this an hour and a half, but we were given 30 minutes. So, to be able to bring the fun, because curriculum should always be fun. And if we're looking a little at who our students are, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this, because I know Karen and Jimmy were just talking about this a little bit, but we're talking undergrad land. So Wendy Boland, who you saw earlier, is Dean of Graduate Land. But we do work together regularly. So a lot of the different things that we know about our students on the far right, the student faculty ratio is something that's really important. Every institution likes to tout that, but there are some institutions, including some that I've worked at in the past, that includes people who never actually teach undergraduate students. And we do a lot of that here. We do have a campus that a lot of our students are engaged in what we call high impact educational practices. And those include things like internships, study abroad. We do have living learning communities. We have lots of the different things. And part of what makes those so high impact is the relationships that students build with faculty members. There's actually a new book that just came out. Haven't sent this out yet, but we're going to do a massive university-wide read for whoever wants to participate. And it's called Relationships Are Everything. And so, or connections. Connections are everything. And it's all about relationship-rich education. So, we care very much about our undergraduate students here. Whenever we're looking at our new students, they are literally moving in right now. And if you haven't, take a walk about 2 buildings that way or 3 buildings that way. And there are just these lines of cars, and they're all coming in and they're hot and sweaty, but they're adorable. And so we have 1,850 new students to bring in. You heard President Burwell earlier today talking about retention. That is incredibly important at AU, because a lot of our finances are driven by tuition. So we want to, keep the students, but also it's because who we are, what we care about, the mission of AU. If you haven't read any about that, read up on it. So, we do have a large number of first-year students coming in, and they are prepared for college. They've got high, average GPAs, but we do also look at the diversity of the incoming class. Regardless of what the Supreme Court says, we know that students learn best when they are in diverse and inclusive academic environments, and that's something that's very important to AU as well. Anything else here, Martyn?
I think that's good. Come back.
Okay, so we're talking just a little bit about the AU core. So this is the general education curriculum at American University. So I'm holding the microphone, so I don't know if I can do it, but I do this a lot. So we've got our verticals. So if we think of our verticals, they're often our departments and our colleges, and we take, our little baby new students, whether they're transfer students or first year students, they might be, in their 70s, and we can still call them our baby students. But we take our students and help them grow intellectually. That's done through, often the departments, the colleges, our epistemologies that we have as experts, but we also want them to be able to grow horizontally. So what are the things that we want our students to do common across all of their curricula, across their academic paths? And so these are certain areas of knowledge and learning that are also driven by learning outcomes. So a general education is also an American distinctive. I won't go into all of this, even though I could nerd out on it all day long, because I'm a curriculum nerd and it's fun. But the things that we want our students to know and do, data shows over time that that's part of what gives American baccalaureate degree students their competitive edge. Because you can think broadly, not just deeply. Many might have been educated in a European system, and the European baccalaureate degree is often shorter. It's much more focused. The American system involves both the depth and the breadth. And Martyn's going to talk a little bit more about our AU core and how that is a distinctive and how you can teach in it, or you might be already.
Yeah, so quick show of hands. How many of you know you're teaching in the AU core this coming year? How many of you are afraid you might be, but have no idea that you're teaching? And there you go. Okay, all right, it's totally fine. We're here to help. When I sat in your chair 12 years ago, we had a general education program that Bridget was sort of describing that the classic American version of that is about like, oh, you got to take some science and some math and some history, and you should like all this sort of like a distribution requirement framework. About 7 years ago, 8 years ago now, we decided that that system that AU had wasn't working. It was old, it was staid, it had kind of calcified here at campus. And so we undertook a big revision of our general education program, and the core curriculum is the result of that. Some of the differences of this transformation you can see up here just in the description of categories that we have across the core, right? It doesn't have that classic distribution requirement that all of you might have had when you were undergraduates, if you went through such a program. I'll drill down into some of the specifics and details on that to explain how what we think, how we know what we're doing is different from what came before, and kind of talk about what the shift in that means, because there's a really big pedagogical change in the transformation that we've had. It's been disruptive here on campus. Disruption is often a good thing. It can also be a hard thing, obviously, and sometimes people get a little bit grumpy about it. But it's also brought a lot of energy, I think, to our core curriculum here at AU. And so we'll talk about some of it. We'll start with the first year experience. And this is what we call the foundation courses, and sort of stands in for that first year experience, generally speaking. There's 4 main components of it, and a couple of these are pretty basic, right? Numbers 3 and number 4 is what you might think of as your first year writing and your first year math, right? Everybody's got to take those. There's various permutations. Students can sort of test into higher level things if they bring lots of skills with them, but there is a requirement that all students take a first year quantitative and first year writing, communication, and information literacy course. We also have, and this is where things got new and distinct for us, numbers 1 and 2. The AU Experience 1 and 2, which you'll often hear referred to as AUX 1 and 2, is a pretty distinct part of our first year experience. AUX 1 is a 1-credit course that all incoming students take. And it is in many ways the sort of like how to college class, right? This is like, these are the skills you need to know in order to succeed at college, to succeed at being on your own, to navigate this place that we call a university. AUX 2 is really distinct. It is a 1.5 credit course. that students take in their second semester, new students take in their second semester. And its focus is on identity and community and belonging, right? So a lot of those same themes that Jimmy and Karen were talking about earlier, we try to be really explicit about here. It's an opportunity for students to think about, who am I? Where am I? What does it mean to be in relationship to other people? Are those people like me? Are they not? What does it mean to be in spaces and rooms and conversations with people who share my background or with people who don't, right? It's an intense course. There's lots of conversation about that course on campus, and I think that's to the good, right? It means that we're getting people to really think about who they are and what it means to be in community with other people, what it means to be citizens, both locally, nationally, and globally, and how that will proceed into the rest of their collegiate career. The second part of this, complex problems, is, I think, a great opportunity. I want to highlight this to all of you. This is the first year seminar class. Complex problems is designed to be interdisciplinary and cross-disciplinary. That is, none of the courses there exist within a department or college structure. Instead, they're all part of this complex problems curriculum. You can teach anything you want, as long as it's complicated. And the point is to make sure that students run into things and be like, we're not going to know the answers. So for example, the complex problems class that I teach right now is called Jerusalem. Yeah, right. Is there an answer to that? No, right? Like, are we going to solve that one? No, right? You read 24 books a night. You're not going to solve that, right? So that's the kind of thing that we wanted to display to students, that even those of us who've been working on things for a really long time, that there aren't simple answers, that there's going to be lots of ambiguity. And it's a chance for you to take something that you're passionate about and broaden the ways in which that course gets taught, right? To go outside of maybe the disciplinary expectations of a particular department or school, and like bring in all sorts of other kinds of stuff. This next slide is just an example of some of those complex problems courses that we teach. There are, boy, I forget the number. Jimmy, do you know offhand how many complex problems courses we teach every year? I should have this. It's well over 100 different courses. You can see here just some of the variety of classes that we teach: death penalty perspectives, Black is Beautiful, becoming sentient scholars, exoplanets, in fact, in fiction, right? There's all sorts of opportunities here. So you're probably not teaching one of these right now, but if you wanna, we'd love to have you. Right. So if there's something that maybe doesn't fit into the curriculum of your department or your program really nicely, but you want to get involved with first-year students, Complex Problems is the place for you. And we can talk more about the details of how that works, but it's a really great time.
Just a quick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And because as Karen was talking earlier about some of the results from the National Survey of Student Engagement, those pieces of combined ideas from different courses, connected learning to societal problems or issues, included diverse perspectives, examined strengths and weaknesses. The complex problems courses are one of the reasons that AU students perform so well on that kind of knowledge. And that's the kind of knowledge, again, research over time shows us that students really need to be able to put that together. Rosalind was talking a little bit about this earlier, how she teaches a course in the core. This can also be a great way of taking some of the research that you do, the really interesting problems that you solve as scholars, and bring these to first-year college students. So something to think about.
Thank you. All right, so the middle part of the course is what we call the habits of mind. This is 5 different courses that students need to take. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all sort of standard 3-credit courses, and then 1, 2, and 3 are 3-credit courses. Number 4, the natural scientific, there is a 4-credit because that's a lab course, and then number 5 is also a 3-credit course. There's a couple of things about this that are really distinct, and the first one is this. All of these courses, although they might look a little bit like standard distribution requirement kinds of things, you see names in there that's like, oh yeah, some history, and oh yeah, some science, and maybe some art, right? We emphasize here that the content is secondary to the way of thinking. I'm going to say that again because it kind of runs up against a lot of like how we've made our names, or how we've like jumped through the hoops to get our PhDs or our degrees, or like make our name in the field, right? Where it's like, oh, like content knowledge is everything, right? Like, I know more about this one. No, not in these courses, right? And that, because that's not the point of these courses. That content knowledge matters, right? But these courses are about how to think. How do we see the world? How do we understand the world? How do we engage the world? Because, students aren't all going to, like, they all have one major, right? Maybe two, right? But to be a citizen of the world, you need to be able to see the world from lots of different points of view. And those points of view include intellectual points of view, disciplinary points of view, epistemological points of view, to borrow Bridget's phrase from earlier. And so in these Habits of Mind course, the content becomes secondary to teaching students about how to think about the world. It's not what to know. We know they can look that up. They need to know what to do with that information they find. They need to know what to do when they don't know what to do, right? They need to find ways to answer problems, to think about problems differently, to explore the world around them. And so the Habits of Mind are designed for this. Now, so yeah, there's some kind of like content organization here, but the emphasis on the course is about ways of thinking. How do we develop habits of mind? And one of these habits that we'd like to think is the recognition that there's no singular point of view that's going to solve all the problems in the world. Sometimes we need to shift. Sometimes we need to think about something from a different perspective. And so this is where that some of that distribution stuff does matter. It's like, oh, wait, like if I think about this from just a little, if I bring in historical context, if I bring in social context, if I think about this from a sort of aesthetic point of view, does that change how I'm imagining what I've encountered here, right? So these courses are in many ways the heart of what the core is all about. I would also say that the other sort of unique thing here is that in a lot of old school gen ed programs, that these are the courses that you would expect to tick off in your first 3 or 4 semesters. These courses are designed to happen all across the entirety of the curriculum, right? So students will encounter Habits of Mind courses at the 1, 2, 3, and 400 level. You can take them in any sequence, right? And the hope is that students will run into them a bunch of different times, right? And so that this becomes a really robust and regular part of their collegiate experience. We've got a couple of examples here of just a few different titles. I won't go into this, so we can maybe save a few minutes for conversation. But there's lots of different things that happen here in the core. It's an ongoing process. If you've got a new course that you might want to see become part of the core, we've got a pretty robust process to make that happen, where we engage with committees to kind of go over the curriculum and sort of think about the difference of the pedagogical aims of these courses versus sort of a content specific kind of class. But it's an exciting, I think, an exciting way to rethink how general education works at a place like AU. The final third part of the core is what we call the integrative courses. And here also, I think, is a rather distinct feature here. So all of these courses are part of the core, but they are also made to be explicitly connected to a student's major. So after you've done that first year stuff, after you've done the Habits of Mind thing, when you now get into your major, you're going to take a course that emphasizes these 4 that fulfills these 4 categories: diversity and equity, what we call the W2, or the written communication information literacy 2. You might think of this as a writing in the disciplines course, a quantitative literacy 2 class, so a second quantitative course, and then the capstone. And all of these are meant, at least ideally, to happen within that student's major. So they've learned that foundational stuff, they've done the Habits of Mind, and then, hey, that AUX2 course that asks about a student's own identity and how they fit in the world, now they're going to start to see some of this diversity and equity stuff show up within their major, and make that connection from the first year to the third or the fourth. That stuff that you did in first year writing, yeah, that's going to come back, and it's going to come back in spades when you really learn how to do it within your particular field. Oh yeah, you thought, oh, I'll just take stats class first year. All of a sudden you're like, wait, I'm a sociologist. I need to know how to do some really sophisticated quantitative thinking as a sociologist. What does that look like? And this happens all across the board, right? And so we've got some really great science courses that do diversity and equity stuff. We've got some really interesting humanities courses that do quantitative thinking, right? It's meant to illustrate how all of these principles of a broad-based liberal arts education can impact whatever your major is, whatever college you're in, whatever school you're in. The capstone then obviously is that moment to do a really summative piece of work that draws together all of these threads, both from a liberal arts education and then from your specific major, and make a work that is unique and distinct to you. We've got a few examples of the courses here, but again, out of a question of time and maybe having some chance for opportunity, I won't read through them, but you can see our diversity and equity courses really span a really broad spectrum of what happens here on campus. I think they're some of the most exciting courses to teach if you really dig into it. I teach a course on Islam in America that falls under this category, and it's just one of the real thrills of my year getting to teach that course. I would also say, and we saw this in some of the data about our students about how they care about diverse experiences and diverse encounters and people different from them. AU's doubled down on this. I know the DEI kinds of stuff are under attack all across America. Screw them, right? No, like we're going the other way, right? Like these are our principles and we care about them, and we've hard baked them into the foundation of our liberal arts education here. So this really matters a lot to us. We've got work to do. Right. I don't want to say that it's perfect. We got a lot of work to do at AU, in DC, nationally. But we wanted to put our money where our mouth was on this particular matter. Let's see here. One last thing to say, this is then all sort of intentionally scaffolded, right? So those foundation courses happen at the first year. The habits of mind are then meant to spread. You know, students will start taking those maybe the second semester, right, of their first year, a bunch in their sophomore and junior year, maybe some bleeding over into their senior year. And then those integrative courses happening sort of end of junior year and into their senior year. But the hope is that even though it's not a sequential kind of thing, it is meant to provide them sorts of skills that once they get to that capstone, all that stuff might come to bear, right? And we've done some assessment of that so far, and it seems to be the case that that's happening. Folk who are teaching that capstone are like, oh yeah, students are bringing in a wide variety of things, right? This program is now 5 years old, and we're starting to see the fruits of this, and so far our assessment of it looks really encouraging. Let's see, I think I'll give it back to you to talk big picture stuff.
Well, we can just leave this up as well. And we've got about 8 minutes if there's questions or discussion that we want to have.
Thank you so much. I kind of want to come back and do another bachelor's degree. This is really amazing. So I'm Sarah Gilchrist. I'm going to be working mostly with graduate students, and I wondered how many of these classes overlap into the graduate curriculum, and if those classes do, like, how does that impact graduate studies?
Yeah. So not a lot, but on occasion, right? So for example, some of in the integrative courses there at the end, some of the div courses, the diversity and equity, some of the W2 courses will be courses that are offered at the 400 and 600 level, right? So graduate students might get an opportunity to be in an upper level course that is satisfying this part of the core. Obviously, if we've got a student who's a BA/MA student, they'll be going through this, and we found ways to work that out quite nicely. But in course of their sort of like regular progression, I don't know that graduate students would encounter this very much, is the short answer to that.
There's a little overlap though.
Yeah, there are certainly those moments, right? When we've had upper level, I know like our feminist theory class in the CRGC is a 400 level course that counts. It might be both W2 and div, and that routinely has about half of its enrollment as graduate students, and so there are opportunities there certainly. And we've got a lot of 400, 600 level courses. The course I mentioned earlier, Islam in America, has space for graduate students, so it will depend program to program how often those students encounter one another, but it certainly does happen.
Yeah, that's what I hoped you were going to talk about, the 4,000, 6,000. We do also have graduate students who work in the Writing Center, and I think in the Quantitative Support Center. Is that correct? That's in Jimmy's area. And so grad students do have a role in undergraduate education here, often kind of in the one-on-one things. Do you want us to answer the question online? Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to read it because this is probably one for you. So William Akoto is asking, how are the core courses selected and how frequently are the courses revised? Can any faculty develop and teach in a complex problem seminar?
Any full-time faculty, I'll take this in reverse order. Any full-time faculty member can teach in the complex problems program. We do require that you are full-time. We wanted this to be an opportunity for students to encounter professors that are here on a full-time basis that they might take a course from again in subsequent years. And so that is one sort of requirement there, right? We do have adjuncts teaching in the habits of mind and the integrative section. So it's a little bit more broadly available for folk that way, but otherwise anybody can teach in complex problems. And we really want everybody from every college on campus to teach in this program. I think that's another feature of this. A lot of universities, gen ed is sort of like owned by arts and sciences or something, and we have no interest in that. We want SIS courses, we want school communication courses, SPA, we want everybody school ed to be part of the core, right? So I think that's another sort of feature of what we do. In terms of how are they selected and how often are they revised? Selection is straightforward but tough. And what I mean by that is, like, if you've got an idea for a course, there is a proposal form, fill it out, send it to us. And we have got a committee. We have over 70 faculty members who serve on subcommittees for the core. And one of their main jobs is to review new course proposals, right? So if working with your chair, you've got a new course that you want to design for the core, you would submit that to us. The committee would review it. You'll likely get some good feedback, right? And then we've got sort of an approval process for moving that forward. Revision is sort of up to the faculty. Like, we all want to revise a course, from semester to semester, year to year, right? And so that's natural and fine. We are also, because we're now moving into our 6th year, in the middle of what I think is a pretty robust and we're hoping really authentic assessment program to see if, those courses that were approved 6 years ago, are they still the courses that are being taught today? If not, what's changed? Is that change for better or for ill, right? How much drift away from some of the features of the core have we had? And how much more sort of doubling down on the core have we seen, right? And so we're engaged. We don't ask, there's not a sort of like automatic renewal process, but there is a robust assessment process to try to ensure that the program remains vital and nimble as it goes, right? And part of that assessment process is not just like, hey, what's your syllabus look like, or what do your assignments look like? It's also, hey, is this part of the core like working, right? Did the learning outcomes that we developed collectively, do they make sense? Or maybe that's not right. Maybe we need to change it, right? So we hope that our assessment approach is really holistic to keep the core vital for years to come and not lead to that sort of stagnating tendency that can occasionally happen.
And I think, not to scare you off, and I'm still new at this. This is week 8 on the job. But, it's not that approvals are super impossible. Instead, it's just you need to be able to have a course that connects with these broad learning outcomes at the same time, because they're really important to undergraduate education. But in the process of going through and getting other people to look at your syllabi in growth-minded ways, you become a better teacher. Like, I'm a better teacher in everything that I teach because I have taught, first semester writing in an interdisciplinary way, because I've taught, broad problem-centered courses. It makes me a better teacher in everything I do. So.
I'll say one last thing about that real quick, right? So for example, if we were to take the socio-historical category for habits of mind, right? You might be coming at this from more of a sociological background or more of a historical background. The requirement and expectation of this is that you have both. The committee is going to be comprised of somebody from the university library, and then hopefully, in our ideal sense, if you want to join a committee, there's service opportunities. Y'all come talk to me here in a year or two. I'm quite serious about that. Actually, it's a really great place to serve. Hopefully a representative from every college on campus, right? So that syllabus and your proposal will be getting looked at from a really diverse spectrum of people. It's not like the history department is going to own it. Not at all. There might not even be somebody from the history department on that committee, right? Somebody else from with a historical background, perhaps from SPA, would be serving in that space. And that means two things. One, again, nobody's going to police the content because they're not all like experts in this really diverse content, but they are going to be really good about thinking about, hey, has this course exhibited this attention to ways of knowing That's at the heart of the core, right? So we're not going to go after your content. We are going to be like, what kinds of connections are you making? Is there both a historical and a societal thing happening here? And are you putting those into conversation in ways that are really productive, right? Those are the kinds of questions that we ask, right? So we want to approve a lot of classes. We want to work with you. And I think our committees are really good at working with proposals and proposers. But we've got standards, and we think it's our duty to uphold those, right? So it's some of both. We'd really be eager to talk with you and work with you if you're interested in a course of this sort. Probably one last question, maybe? No?
Yes, let's do a quick one.
I just want to know the timeline for approval.
Oh, the timeline for approval. Okay. So we've got 2 deadlines every year. There's a deadline in early September and then a deadline at the beginning of February. The course will get a decision within about 8 weeks of those deadlines, right? And so if you propose something in the fall semester, it could theoretically be on the books for the spring semester. Probably more likely, just with how scheduling works, it would be for the following year, but that's the general outline for that.
And if you want to talk more, we do have a break later, and our emails are just our last names.
Please just come find us.